Right. So, hello everyone. So, welcome to JM podcast number 2. So, our topic today will be ways to budget as an international student. So, before we start, just a small disclaimer that the information in this podcast relates specifically to the US, but the relevant information can be applicable to Canada, the UK, or Australia as well. So we have our guest today, Miss Yugi, who has been joining with us in podcast number 1. So Yugi, I'm sure deciding to travel abroad for your academic studies is a very exciting but also very challenging decision. So in order to prepare for this new journey, what do you think students should learn more about?
Well, to prepare yourself, you must learn about the area's culture, typical food options, housing, and budgeting. While most people find budgeting challenging, it is an essential tool to keep you financially stable and able to focus on your studies. This is true whether you have to little money or not. Even if you have sufficient funds, knowing how to track your money and spend wisely is an essential life skill.
I strongly agree with that. So I believe that you will easily fall into the situation where you'll be left with no cash, despite of how much money you have. If you spend like there is no tomorrow. So should we start breaking down from the biggest expense, which is the college or the university funds? So let's not mention the case where the family will be the one who pay completely for it. But I know there's a lot of students who travel, study abroad independently, or if they want to support their family one or another way. So, do you have any suggestions on this, like how they can support their family and stuff?
Is a long way to go. I mean, it's quite long to talk about it. Well, for international students who may not be able to work due to visa restrictions and who may not be able to access student loans, how to pay college is very challenging. Let's consider some of the ways that international students can finance their studies. Well, first of all, it goes for the scholarships. Many US universities want to attract international students and create fellowship programs addressing the needs of these students. Secondly, student loans. The US and international banks offer loans, usually with interest rates, of course, to cover the cost of academic study. So it's very important to remember that loans do not typically cover housing or academic supplies. And the third one should be student grants. Grants are typically need-based. You must meet certain financial conditions to be considered. And employment, quite tricky one here. This is tricky category as the visa limits a student's ability to work while pursuing academic study.
Can you tell us a bit more about visas and the limitations? Are students not allowed to work at all, or they are allowed to work with some restrictions?
Right, it's also a long way to go for this one as well. The US offers two types of visas for international students. The first one is the F1 and the second one is the M1. Common requirements for both include, firstly, must be enrolled in an academic language training or vocational program. Secondly, the school must be approved by a student and exchange visitors program, immigration and customs enforcement. Then students must be enrolled in full-time study, can't be the part-time one. Students should also have proficiency in English or should be enrolled in courses leading to proficiency. And the next one is students must have funds available for self-support during the entire course of study. Last but not least, which is quite important too, students must maintain a residence abroad. Students with the F1 visa can't work off campus during the first year of study. However, after the first year, students can work off campus in specific training programs. Students with an F1 visa can only work after their training is over. This point is important and people have to keep in mind.
Yeah, so it seems like students can hardly use part-time job to cover their expenses. So I think that's why for the US international students, it's very necessary as well as very common to prepare a very extremely beautiful profile so they can, like, with their achievements, their activities and also a well-written essay so they can get a really high scholarship. So before we coming into details on how to budget and how to control your finance, so that our audience get a better idea. So how do you define budget?
Well, right. A budget breaks down the money coming in versus the money coming out. Earning and spending. I mean, earning versus spending. For example, many international students cannot work while studying in the US. Accordingly, an international student will have to find resources through loans, scholarships, fellowships, and family and friends to finance education. Understanding the amount of money you will earn from these resources will give you a clear idea of the amount you can spend. Once you have your earnings written down, you will move on to the consideration of what you will spend. Here are some typical items in the student budget. Firstly, living costs. These may include housing. Many college, university students will offer housing to international students. However, in some situations, you will have to live off campus, and housing is an international expense, falling outside of the tuition costs. On average, yearly housing at a college fall between 50,000 to 25,000 US dollars. Should you decide to live off campus, the cost will be dependent upon location, but could range from 700 to 5,000 US dollars per month. And the second part of this living cost is food. Of course, people have to eat to survive, right? There are numerous food options in the US academic institutions, including dining halls, floor kitchens, and food cooperatives. You may decide to purchase groceries at the local stores, which can cost anywhere around 180 to 250 per month. And then academic supplies. Something that shocks international students is the fact that course materials such as textbooks, online access, or supplies are not included in the tuition. Depending upon the subject you will study, academic supplies can run from 500 to 1,500 US dollars per semester. That's cute. That's kind of huge. And then we go for the health insurance. Most American universities require their students to have health insurance. Some colleges offer plans to students, while certain states offer discount programs. As of 2020, the yearly cost of health insurance for international students in the US was about 1,200 per year. That's high. And then we move on to the next point. It is about transportation, which is very necessary and is must be considered. During holidays such as Thanksgiving and winter break, American universities become ghost zones. It sounds funny, but it's true. With most students, staff, and faculty leaving campus. For international students, travel home can be quite costly, of course. So you will want to budget for flights home. While returning home during a break, it's important to consider you will also need to budget a cost of local transportation too. For example, in New York City, many people rely on subway or buses for transport. You can buy weekly or monthly passes that are discounted.
So that's a lot of things to spend in a month, isn't it? Like
Right.
it's extremely different when you live with your parents. Like when you live independently, everything will come out of your own pocket, and if you spend a lot on other things, you will be left with nothing at the end of the month. So the cost that you mentioned, I think those are the fixed cost for every month. What about other spendings like shopping, meeting your friends, or going out for dinners and everything?
Yeah, that's also a funny thing to see. Well, even though it's not a must, it's quite necessary for your life, isn't it? The
Yeah.
costs above are considered essential, definitely. And the costs that are non essential can include clothing, salon visits, gym membership, dining out, streaming services, subscriptions, and events. As an important part of your experience will be a social life and exploration of the local culture, you must budget these costs. So, using the costs outlined above, we will draft a budget. Well, firstly, determining total income amount available, the one that you have. 2, subtracting essential costs. List out the things that you're going to spend the money on. 3, calculating disposable income, which is the amount you can spend on non-essential items.
Sure thing. So, because, spending on the non essential expenses is the most easily overspent, like, in my personal opinion, like, because,
Right.
like, you might end up buying too many clothes and shoes without noticing. Or if you have like 10 days in a month having dinner out in a fancy restaurant, you'll be left with nothing, I believe. So
Right.
therefore, a well thought out budgeting process would be very necessary to take the stress out of your finance and help you focus on your studies. Uh, so, everyone, there is a few questions that you can ask yourself when you try to control and try to budget. Like, do you know how much money do you have in a month? Uh, have you begun a sample budget for your international studies? And if so, what is the most difficult aspect of the budgeting process? If you haven't, do you intend to create one? And yeah, what do you fear the most financially about your international studies? That's a few questions you can ask yourself before you moving out to an independent living space. So yeah, that should be the end of the podcast today. And thanks a lot, Yugi, for joining with us today and share your extremely useful insights.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.